What's up, Trojans? So I want to start off with this because this was a very, very frustrating game. What do you think is worse? When the team falls apart for 4 quarters straight, does nothing, you know they never had a shot at the game, but you go, hey, maybe they'll get them next week. Or a game like this, where the Giants had every opportunity to win and just couldn't do it. I mean, from the beginning, the Bengals were only up 7-0 for forever because of one huge Joe Burrow run. Like, who knew Joe Burrow would get out and do a large run? That's why they were up 7-0 for forever. Then the Giants actually come out and make it a game. It's 7-7 for a moment, then immediately down to 10-7, and that's basically where it stays for the remainder of the realistic game. I know it ended up going up to 17 at one point, but, that was the end of the game. It was, irrelevant at that point anyway. This was a game the Giants should have won. And, you could break it down into something like, if a ref made that call. The refs, as much as I would love to be like, the refs cost us this game, the refs gave us a lot of breaks, too. Based on penalties that existed, of course, but the Giants had a lot of breaks in this game that they just needed to capitalize on and couldn't. Their only touchdown drive, the only points of the game the Giants scored, mind you, were off of a drive where they had, their longest play, it felt like it was 4 yards. They converted at least 2 fourth downs, and they just kept doing these small plays. It was like a 20-play drive almost for the touchdown. It was so long. And it's a great drive, don't get me wrong. But the Giants just needed a big play to work out in their favor. And the problem is, they existed. The big plays were there. There was at least 3 deep passes that Jones could have made, but something was just a little bit off on the throw. Then you had the huge play that was made with Darius Slayton, but Andrew Thomas was an ineligible man downfield. And just all these little, not even little things, these huge plays that just get taken out by these little things. Just so frustrating to see from this team. Week in and week out, it feels like it's coming down to that. Just these little, tiny things that any other team could overcome. Hey, we had this insane deep pass, but, overthrew the guy by a foot. That's okay. We'll get him on the next drive. Other teams were able to get that guy in the next drive. If not the drive after that, get some points on the board. The Giants, no, they needed that one right then and there. And it's not even like it only existed right then and there. Like I said, so many plays for the Giants if they could just do it. And I need to give a full shout out to the Giants defense that unfortunately only had 4 sacks in this one. Would have helped me out a lot if they had 5, but only got 4. And even with that, with how well the defense played, they gave up a big play early on. Then the Bengals had to earn a field goal. Okay. That was really the only points they earned of the night. Otherwise, the Giants stopped them. The Giants actually did something huge on defense. On offense, Dable went for it on a 4th down he had no business going for it on. On the Giants' own, I think it was 38-yard line, he went for it on a 4th and 2. Of course it failed. And the Bengals have the ball already right there in field goal range, and the defense forces a turnover, knocks the ball out, recovers it. Wow, something could happen here. And, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was actually the drive with the Darius Slayton huge play that got called back. I don't think that was the insane drive with the touchdown. I might be wrong. If that is the case, then, the defense is the only reason the Giants were even in the game. The defense was all over them all night. Non-stop pressure, very great coverage. The Bengals had to work for every single yard they got except for 2 plays. The long Joe Burrow run, and at the end of the game, the long run right up the middle. The defense was tired. It was game over anyway. Didn't make that much of a difference. The only other play where you could argue, like, oh, the defense really messed up is the play that ultimately sealed the game, the long reception on the sideline. But otherwise, the defense was stellar all night. Like, a near perfect performance from the Giants' defense. You had Burns getting in there. You had Dexter Lawrence getting in there for the sack. Azeez Ojulari could have had 5 sacks himself. So much nonsense happened with Azeez Ojulari getting sacks. I mean, he was credited with 2, but he fully sacked Joe Burrow, thought he knocked the ball out, it looked like at least, and then he just turned around and Joe Burrow is still standing holding the ball. Then you had where he wrapped Joe Burrow up, but he threw it away, and then there was that was the intentional grounding. I think something similar happened on another play with Azeez Ojulari, but it wasn't quite intentional grounding. Like, Azeez Ojulari was getting in there all night. Brian Burns had so many pressures, so many huge run stuffs from Brian Burns, and Dexter Lawrence was being Dexter Lawrence. Dexter Lawrence actually didn't have as many pressures, but Dexter Lawrence played a pretty good game as well. And then you had the secondary covering everyone, blanket coverage all night. The Bengals really had to work to earn every single yard they did. Like I said, except on a couple of big plays. So that brings me, unfortunately, to the Giants' special teams. So many points got left on the board from the kicking. 6 at least. Then you have to consider, like, you go for it on, like, a 4th down instead of, like, maybe you considered kicking it. I think that was one of the 4th downs the Giants didn't get. And, like, realistically, 9 points go off the board due to Giants kicking. That's the difference maker right there. Games played completely differently anyway if the game is 10-10 on that last drive. Or even the drive before that, I think it would have been 10-10 as well when that field goal was kicked. Just very unfortunate situation the Giants put themselves in. And the real culprit of this game, unfortunately, because I don't think they played a bad game, is the Giants' offense. The Giants' offense cost the Giants this game. I know it's easy to blame the kicker on the special teams. It's very easy to blame the ref for not having some pass interference calls. But the Giants did get a huge pass interference call, even if it was the most obvious pass interference call in NFL history, more obvious than the no call of the Saints-Rams game in the NFC Championship. That's right, I remember that. That one stings still. I'm not even a Saints fan. But it was one of the most obvious calls, and the refs called it, and that's what resulted in the Giants' only touchdown of the night. The Giants did this to themselves. There's no other way to put it. You go to one drive. I think this was where they went for it on 4th down and couldn't get it. In Bengals territory late in the game. There was a 2nd and inches. And what do the Giants do? They do a play that's been working for them all night, the quarterback sneak. But then, on a 3rd and 1, that same drive, just, almost 10 yards up the field, they do a run, and Tyrone Tracy has a loss of yardage. And he was actually really great tonight. He didn't have the 100 rushing yards he had last time, but he might have had 100 yards from scrimmage because he was catching the ball a lot. Like, a lot. With some late in the game yards, Darius Slayton might have had a lot of receiving yards too. Same thing with Wan'Dale Robinson. The offense got a lot of yards, but they shot themselves in the foot when they had the real opportunities to take this game. Just so frustrating. And that's why I asked at the beginning of this video, what's worse? The Giants failing from start to finish, like in the 40-0 loss to Dallas, or this, where they play like the better team for 80-90% of the game, but lose by a margin that makes them look like they got wrecked. I mean, 10 points is not considered that close of a game. But the Giants really were the better team here, and they just shot themselves in the foot. They weren't the better team where it counted on the scoreboard. But they played like the better team. The Giants' offensive line gave Daniel Jones a lot of time. The Giants' defensive line was all over Joe Burrow all day. And really stopped that run game from getting off with the Bengals as well. Giants' defense was amazing, especially that defensive line. Giants' offense should have been amazing. I should be sitting here right now going, wow, so amazing. The Giants were able to put 28 points as the defense only held them to 10. What a dominant performance by the Giants. That should be what I'm saying right now, but it's not, because this team is so frustrating. They're so close. They're on the verge of greatness, but they just can't do it. That's why I'm at this team right now. Again, this team should be 5-1. This should not be a 2-4 team. They just can't seem to figure out how to win these close games this year. They could only win games where they're winning from start to finish. Would they have to dominate just to win? Even, you go back to the Seahawks and the Browns games. Those were Giants wins. Those should have been wins by more. And then you look at 3 of the losses they had, and the Giants should have won 2 of them, really. The Bengals won for sure, and then take your pick between Washington and Dallas. Just very disappointed in this team. Ultimately, okay, let me be serious for a moment now. All right, I was very serious before, but let me just calm down and analyze this. They're 2-4. It's not the end of the world. It feels like it. Lost a primetime game, but going into the year, this is a game I figured the Giants would lose. And ultimately, I think I really only would have had the Giants at 3-3 at this point in the year, because I actually would have had them beating the Vikings and Washington, and then maybe Dallas, but then dropping the other 3. I probably would have had them losing to the Seahawks, and then losing to the Browns, and then losing to the Bengals, of course. This Bengals team, going into the year, I would be like, no chance the Giants beat this team. On to the next one. But the season plays out how it plays out, and going into this game, at halftime even, in the third quarter, when it gets all tied up, and it's the Giants could do this. Even when it's 10-7 and the Giants are driving and getting a lot of yards, it's this could be a 10-14 game really soon. But it just wasn't. And so the Giants, they're not even at a bad spot still. Those 2 wins really prevent this season from just being over. But something has to turn around soon. 2-5 is not it, and 2-6 is definitely not it. One of the next 2 games needs to be a win to still have a season. And preferably, very, very preferably, it's the Eagles. The Eagles game is a must-win for the Giants, or a near must-win for the Giants to have a season to come back to. If the Giants had won this one, made it 3-3, I'd be let's go. Playoffs. Let's do this. We're in the running. But they just couldn't do it. So frustrating. Week in, week out, having to just see the Giants be this close. All right, ending on a positive note, shout out to Azeez Ojulari, of course. Played a great game, in Joe Burrow's face all day. Had the 2 sacks. Could have had a couple more. See you guys in the next one.